Hey, my name is Callie Chappelle, and thanks for tuning into this video about identifying pedigrees, the basics. I'm a biology student at the University of Michigan, and I'm creating this series of videos for Bio 305, which is Introduction to Genetics. Because of the breadth of the course, I wanted to make a series of videos that highlights the most important aspects of the class. So these are the aspects that you absolutely need to know to do well on exams. I like to call this the quick and dirty because I realize that genetics is a pretty time-intensive course. It's rather challenging, and it's really nice to have another resource to be able to look through when you're trying to fully understand the material. Also, I recognize the lectures are short and only twice a week, at least for my semester, and that makes it difficult for the professors to cover all the material to the depth that some students would like. So here are the topics covered in this video. The first is how to identify pedigrees. So this is a strategy that I've come up with that I like to use and have found very successful in quickly identifying pedigrees. And then second, some practice identification problems. So here is a short disclaimer. So the best way to figure out a pedigree for sure is to actually go through and write out the genotypes of every single person in the pedigree to verify it. Obviously, on an exam, you may not have enough time to actually do that. So here are some quick and dirty tips that I've used to quickly identifying pedigrees so you can at least create a hypothesis, and then if you have extra time at the end of the exam, go back and check it to make sure. So the first thing is to identify the traits. So when you're looking at a pedigree, you need to ask yourself first, does it skip generations? Okay, so if the answer to that question is yes, then it's recessive, most likely, and if the answer is no, then it's most likely dominant. Okay, the next question you should ask yourself, so we're just going to go on the recessive tint, is does it affect males and females equally, or does it just mainly affect males? Also, you should know the recessive offspring can be identified if they show a different phenotype than both of their parents. So, for example, let me grab my handy-dandy pen here. I kind of like orange, actually. I've enjoyed that color. So let's say that we have, here is mom, and here is dad, and neither of them are affected, but they have, I don't know, let's say they have two children, a male and a female, and only the female is affected. Then that's an indication that it's most likely a recessive trait because the offspring is showing a different phenotype than either of their parents. But here's another way, if it affects both males and females equally, or if it mainly affects males. So, hang on, let me take me off the pen. Nope, that didn't take me off the pen, just kidding. Then, if it affects both males and females equally, it's most likely autosomal recessive, and you can identify that as normal parents having abnormal kids, like we saw up there, or if it affects mainly males, then it's likely X-linked recessive. And you can rule this out, so it's not X-linked recessive if an unaffected father has an affected daughter, because obviously you can't have that. You can't have that. All right, down here are some pictures of what these look like. All right, so let's look at the dominant side. So do affected fathers give it to all of their daughters? If the answer is no, then it's likely autosomal dominant. You could identify that because abnormal parents can have normal kids. And then here, if it's X-linked dominant, you can identify it if all female offspring are affected, if affected fathers, and half of the male offspring are affected. Okay, so this is a quick and easy table. What I would do is go through, write down this table yourself, and then prove it to yourself by doing some practice problems, which we are going to do right now. So here's a pretty funny meme that I thought, because that was long and maybe boring to you. I thought this was pretty funny because genetics, at least my genetics class, is mostly pre-med students. I'm not a pre-med student, so I can make these jokes. All right, let's do some practice problems. So I found this really great resource online. The link is here for some practice problems, just identifying pedigrees fast and easy. So what you can do is pause this video, try to do these pedigrees yourself, like identify right down here. I think that this is X-linked recessive or something. And then I'm going to go through, give you all the answers, and I'll talk about how, using the tricks that I just talked about above, I identified these to be what they are. So let's get started. So here's A, so pause the video if you want to do it now where it's large. And the answer is autosomal recessive. We know that because it skips generations, okay? You can see this trait is not present in every generation, and it seems to affect males and females approximately equally. It's not just males that we're seeing that are affected. So I think that it's autosomal recessive. All right, here's the next one. This one I would say is autosomal dominant because it's present in every generation and it affects the males and females equally. Also, both affected parents result in unaffected offspring, which means that it's likely dominant. And it cannot be X-linked because affected father can't pass on the trait to his, or does not pass on his trait to all of his daughters. So what does this mean in context? Well, let's say that these two parents, so like let's say that this parent, if this is autosomal dominant, this is like, this parent is A. That means that for this child to be affected, they'd have to be A and then something. So this means that it can either be A, or A, big A, or little a. This could be the same. And then this has to be, these all have to be this because they are not affected. Okay. What about this one? This one looks weird. Well, this looks like an autosomal dominant because it's present every generation, and then affected parents produce unaffected children. Right? Because, yeah. Yep. That, because of, I'm sorry, I was looking at this one, but it's actually this. Again, autosomal dominant for the same reason. If this parent would have to be like this parent would have to be like this child would be this child would be this child would have to be this. Okay, what about this one? I say, oh, this is not letting me click, excuse me, because my pen's still on. Let me take the pen off. I'd say this is autosomal recessive because it skips generations and it seems to affect males and females equally. What about this one? X-linked recessive because it skips generations but affects more males than females. In fact, it only affects males, so we're going to say X-linked recessive. This one I say is autosomal dominant because it's present every generation and it affects equal numbers of males and females. This one I say is X-linked recessive because it skips generations and affects mainly males. This one's autosomal recessive because it skips generations but seems to affect males and females equally. And that's all. So I thought this was pretty cool because I also love pandas. Yay! And that's pretty cute, right? So this is homozygous recessive, homozygous dominant. Actually, no, this would be incomplete dominance because you're seeing both traits. And then it results in a panda. Cute, but we haven't talked about these advanced techniques. Now, this gets a lot more complicated because there are other things. Obviously, traits are not just autosomal or X-linked recessive or dominant. You also have other things like maternal inheritance, maternal effect, linked genes, and printing, etc. So those topics, which also create very complicated pedigrees, will be talked about in a video in the future. So make sure you tune into that because this is not all you could see. The fun's not over, kids. Cool. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.